Today on Ag Etc., meet this week's young leader in ag, Jacqueline Leffler, a young aspiring agricultural influencer from America's Kansas. Jacqueline shares how she's not only advocated for the agricultural industry, but how she's making the most out of the pandemic by filling a niche market. Then Britton Rucker speaks with Matt Teagarten, CEO of the Kansas Livestock Association, about the impacts of COVID-19 for cattle producers in Kansas and the action KLA is taking to assist producers throughout this pandemic. Next, we speak with agricultural economist Brian Coffey from K-State about factors at play regarding the effects on the live cattle markets. Finally, a new generation of veterinarians are changing veterinary client-patient relationships. Learn how they want to take care of you on a day-to-day basis. It's all coming up on Ag Etc. Stay tuned.
Kansas Farm Bureau has served farm families and rural Kansas for more than 100 years, and we're pleased to offer new healthcare coverage choices for Kansans in 2020 through Kansas Farm Bureau health plans. No matter what stage of life you're in, we'll have options that fit your lifestyle. Plus, our network of providers is one of the largest available throughout the state of Kansas and beyond. For more information, including the different plans available, or to get a quote, visit kfbhealthplans.com.
This segment brought to you by Farm Credit Associations of Kansas, lending support to rural America, and by American Ag Service, your DuPont Pioneer dealer.
Welcome back to Ag AM in Kansas. I'm Britton Rucker. For our Young Leaders in Ag segment, I have with me Jacqueline Leffler. Jacqueline, tell me a little bit about your ag background.
Yeah, so I'm Jacqueline Leffler, and I'm from America's Kansas, which is just northwest of Emporia. And I'm the fourth generation of Leffler Farms Incorporated with my sister. And then I work every day with my dad full-time on our farm and ranch where we grow corn, soybeans, and wheat. And then we also have a stocker and feeder background in cattle feedlot as well. And we run grass cattle in the summertime.
Yeah, and you kind of had the untraditional route of not studying ag at Kansas State University.
Yeah, so I went to Kansas State University on a full ride track and field scholarship, and I studied pre-med kinesiology with an influence in public health. And then I also have a degree in family studies and human services. And by my junior year, I got really close with some people in the veterinary department and decided I wanted to switch my degree to animal science. And due to the NCAA being a business, they wouldn't let me switch because of my scholarship. And so I ended up just sticking out with what I had and still ending up back in agriculture anyways.
And now you're sort of an ag influencer online as such.
Yeah, so I don't really know what classifies you as an ag influencer, but I definitely enjoy spending some time on Twitter and Instagram and managing my Facebook page, Leffler Prime Performance, where I sell custom beef for butcher direct to consumer as well.
Yeah. And go into your relationship you have, because you have a strong relationship with Kansas Farm Bureau.
Yeah, so in 2017, I was a part of the Leadership KFB class and was lucky enough to be mentored by the late Jill Caston. And, it was just a great experience. And I met some of my best friends that I'll ever have and still have. And I do a lot of, whether you consider it volunteering at the local level or at the state level, but I've really enjoyed my time getting to network with them, work with them, and represent them as well at AFBF this past year when I competed in the discussion meet.
Yeah. So Jacqueline, what are some future aspirations and where do you see yourself going in the future?
Yeah, if you would have asked me that a few weeks ago before COVID-19 really took off, I think I'd have a completely different answer. But just recently, I kind of saw that need of meat and how it just was so empty at the grocery stores and how there was nothing on the shelves. And my custom beef for butcher business has really taken off. I've done about 4 years worth of sales in the last 6 weeks. And I really think if I can retain just 25% of those people, that's going to be a new avenue of something that I've worked for 5 years. And it just took an event like this to really get it off the ground. But I'm really excited to see where it goes and hopefully get quality meat into people's freezers from here on out.
Yeah. So are you promoting that through platforms such as Facebook and online?
Yeah, so I'm just basically using a business page, Leffler Prime Performance on Facebook, and then on my personal pages as well, I'll post some different things, but really just utilizing the marketplace and free advertising.
Well, a big thank you to Jacqueline Leffler for being on the program and being on our Young Leaders in Ag segment. I'm Britton Rucker, and this has been Ag AM in Kansas.
At Farm Credit, we partner with America's farmers who work hard each and every day to grow the food that we all enjoy. It's not an easy task, but it's an important one. Farm Credit is proud to work with farmers and ranchers, lending support in rural America.
Highways 40, 83, and I-70 come together right here in Oakley. Roads that lead to businesses, to magnificent rock formations, to scenic vistas, to places where legends were made. Roads that lead us home. Discover Oakley, the gateway to western Kansas.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
This segment brought to you by Santa Fe Trail Meats in Overbrook. Let us help feed your family.
I'm Britton Rucker, and this is Ag AM in Kansas. For an update on impacts of the COVID-19 for cattle producers is Matt Teagarten from the Kansas Livestock Association. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Matt, what is the KLA doing in response to the COVID-19 crisis?
So, we're working with our members, livestock producers across the state, identifying challenges that they're having, and there's a multitude, but trying to identify the key areas where we can have an impact. Early on, that included, we recognized that there would be a challenge in getting cattle harvested, and so made sure right from the beginning that we had inspectors and graders that would be on the job in the plants doing their job so we could keep functioning. That was at the very beginning of this situation. We're now seeing with the challenges in terms of workforce issues for the plants impacting, in particular, beef and pork processing plants that we need to be focused on that, trying to keep the workforce in place. Worker safety is paramount. That's the first item on the list of things to be focused on. But with some risk mitigation measures, we think those plants can continue to function at slower speeds, lower capacity, but continue to function. It's really important. On the beef side, the number of cattle that we were projected to harvest and what we've actually harvested is that gap is widening. We want to close that gap and get back up to 100% as quickly as possible.
And you guys have actually been working with the USDA during this whole COVID-19 crisis.
Yeah, so in between, one of the things that we determined was appropriate. This is much like a disaster, and in the past we have worked to with USDA to make disaster programs more suitable, more effective for livestock producers. And so we've done the same thing with the CARES Act, the funding that was included in the CARES Act passed by Congress, signed by the president, and soon to be implemented by USDA. We've provided some suggestions to USDA about how to structure that program to make it more effective for livestock producers. USDA has released a little bit of detail, not much, but a little bit of detail about that program. And one thing we've confirmed is the expectation of a payment limit of $125,000. And that's one that when you start doing the math, the market losses that have impacted our members, all livestock producers, that payment limit is pretty low. It will be just a decimal point of the losses for many of our members. And so we've shared that information back to USDA National Cattlemen's Beef Association has done the same. Members of Congress have done the same to point out that that will not be adequate for many livestock producers, the losses that many livestock producers have suffered.
Right. So what are some key factors for the cattle industry during this crisis?
So, I think the thing that's right in front of us is this packing plant capacity issue and the backlog of cattle that's creating, trying to work through that. We've seen some unusual market dynamics during this stretch, dynamics that we've asked USDA and the Department of Justice to investigate, make sure there's no illegal activity occurring. So we're going to wait on USDA and the Department of Justice for those results. In the meantime, keeping cattle moving through the system is our priority. We're seeing a little bit of a challenge at the feed yard and dairy level with some workers the tested positive and the impact that has on the whole crew. So we're working through that. We've worked on hours of service exemptions to keep trucks running, get product moved around the country, both live animals and meat and milk, make sure that transportation does not become a bottleneck. And then the focus on again that kind of workforce issue is pretty key right now.
Right, and I'm sure cattle producers have many more questions than this 3-minute interview, but as always, your team at KLA is ready to answer questions.
You bet. That's what we're here for, members and producers in general. Contact the KLA office and we'll be happy to answer questions, help guide you in the right direction.
Well, Matt, thanks for being on the program.
You bet. Thank you.
I'm Britton Rucker, and this has been Ag AM in Kansas.
SureCrop Fertilizers was started by my father, Don Sherman, and my mother, Shirley Sherman. Family business that started in the 80s. We predominantly focus on plant nutrients and what we can do to give growers better responses with the fertilizer dollars that they do, and what we can do to make those things work better for the grower. We're based out of Seneca, Kansas. We work with growers in their soil analysis to figure out what they need, and then we can put those in a blend that gives them the best results, and so that we can deliver that direct to their farm so that they have those nutrients where they need them, when they need them, and so that they can apply them in a manner that's very efficient to them and works well in their planting systems and what they're doing. SureCrop Fertilizers has been around for a long time. We always say we're big enough to take care of everything you need, but we're small enough to do it quickly. You can get a hold of us at 1-800-635-4743. Our website is surecropfertilizers.com, and you can always email me at Corey@surecropfertilizers.com, and with any questions you have, we're glad to answer and work with you.
This segment brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
I'm Britton Rucker, and this is Ag AM in Kansas. For an update on open interest in the CME live cattle futures contracts, I have with me Brian Coffey from Kansas State University's Department of Agricultural Economics. Welcome, Brian.
Hi.
Now, Brian, what are the factors at play regarding the effects on the live cattle markets?
Yeah, so there's certainly in 2020, there's been all kinds of things changing, and be difficult to run down that list. One of the specific ones that I was sort of looking at was in the live cattle futures contract, the change in open interest. And open interest basically just means the number of futures contracts that are outstanding, that are open. So that could be a person who is long on the contract, which means that they've agreed to accept delivery on a certain commodity, or they could be short, which means they've agreed to provide delivery. And so we know that people don't often usually deliver or accept delivery, but that's the agreement. And so open interest just is the number of those kind of positions that are out there, and the short positions have to equal the long positions just because the way futures markets work. And the reason that we track that number is it's one way to look at liquidity in a market. So it tells us how many traders are out there with positions. And so that gives an indication of how easy it might be to establish a new position. One of the big ways we want to use futures markets for ag producers is to be able to transfer the price risk of commodities off to someone else. And so being able to easily get in and out of a market is important when you're trying to hedge your price risk like that. And so what we've seen is in coming into the last part of 2019, there was a lot of optimism in beef, strong domestic demand, and some good export signals going on, and then some optimism about expanding into new export markets. And so a lot of things contribute to that. And we saw, over the fall and winter, prices go up in the live cattle futures contract, and we saw a lot of, or relatively some increase in open interest there. And then going into January, of course, with the first COVID-19 case confirmed in the United States, there was all kinds of uncertainty, not just in ag commodities, but of course in equities and all across the economy. And then we started to see this open interest decline. It's been one of the biggest ones. As I look at the CFTC data going back to 2006, this is really one of the biggest declines in open interest that I've seen in the live cattle futures. So we saw between January and the end of March, we saw about a third of open interest disappear. So that happened in a couple different ways. Short hedgers, so that would be people who are using the futures contract to protect their price risk for selling live cattle in the future. They removed about 73,000 positions between January and the end of March. And so what that means is they were covering their hedges, they were offsetting their hedges, but then they didn't replace those. The other big decrease that we saw was managed money traders liquidated about 77,000 long positions. And so managed money just means these are individuals or groups who are trading with other people's money. So they're investors using ag futures as an investment instrument. And so they, again, moved out of those long positions and didn't replace them. And so we saw those that contributed to this big decline. And like I said, as far as I look at the CFTC data going back to 2006, I think this is one of the biggest, on a percentage basis, declines that I've seen in the open interest.
We'll be back with more with Brian Coffey after this short break.
What if we dreamed bigger? What if we looked beyond ourselves to the world outside? With the world population over 7 billion, who will lead us into a sustainable future? Kansas State University's Agronomy Department is working to build that brighter future for us all. As a career in high demand, we're working to understand, manage, and protect Earth's vital resources. We help farmers manage and grow their harvest by studying the science behind plants, soils, and the environment, providing a higher standard of living for all, while being good stewards of our natural resources. We work to make the future greener. We work to make the future brighter. Explore a rewarding career and join us in helping feed the world. Discover the possibilities with Kansas State University Agronomy.
Okay, looks like it's time for our tour. Welcome to the Fort Wallace Museum. Here at the museum, you're going to find some really interesting stuff like our replica stagecoach from the Butterfield Overland Dispatch. We've got facades from the fort buildings. We've got an 1870s flag. There's a plesiosaur that was discovered locally. We've got the Ray pump organ collection. We're a little bitty place with a great big story, and we'd love to have you.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Wheat. Learn more at rediscoverwheat.org.
Welcome back to Ag AM in Kansas. We're here with Brian Coffey, agricultural economist from K-State.
Expand more on the major change in the CME cattle contracts. And you talked about this as a historic decrease in open interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a couple things that would change here would be just the amount of open interest, the relative amount of open interest that's controlled by different groups. And so on the short open interest, we generally see that as mostly held by hedgers. So on a percentage basis, that actually didn't change. So hedgers control about 51% of the short open interest in January, and that percentage was the same by the end of March. So lower number of contracts, but the same percentage. Managed money traders who typically do not hold that large a percent of short open interest, they basically doubled the percentage that they held. That went from 7.5% up to almost 16%. So just the composition of who's holding the contracts changed. On the long side, we saw that long hedgers are holding a higher percentage, so up from 11% to 18.5%. And then on the long side, managed money decreased from controlling about 29% of long open interest down to 14.5%. So just some roles there changing. On the long side, we typically don't see hedgers controlling a large percentage of the open interest. And maybe with the low prices, we saw some of those hedgers wanting to try to lock in a low price. So maybe the contract was a little more attractive there. But yeah, definitely some shifts in who's holding how much open interest.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think, again, that the open interest is just one indicator of liquidity. It's one indicator of how easy it is to get in and out of the market. And so that's why we track it. Last week, the week-to-week changes were positive. So we added 211 positions to open interest, which is a tiny fraction, less than 1%. But we've had a couple weeks there where open interest didn't decline. So it could be a positive sign there that the open interest decline has stopped, and hopefully we could start adding, some more open interest back to that. The managed money traders that I mentioned, it looks like they've stopped adding short positions, and they've gone back to adding a few long positions. And so hopefully that would, again, be a good sign that we're adding some contracts, and we'll get back up to some of those higher levels where hedgers can have a little bit more confidence of ability to get positions placed.
Well, Brian, thanks for giving us an update on open interest in the CME live cattle futures contracts.
Thank you.
I'm Britton Rucker, and this has been Ag AM in Kansas.
Welcome to the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in my hometown of Oakley, Kansas. We're the front door of Western Kansas, located on 3 main highways, I-70, US 83, and US 40. And all those roads lead to history, beautiful scenery, and adventure, no matter which direction you go. We now have an IHOP. That brand that you've trusted up and down the road in all your travels is staffed with local folks, real people, just like you and me, and we're waiting on you to join us. So for fun, adventure, Fuel up, fuel your body, and let's have some fun.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment brought to you by Sure Crop, liquid crop nutrition delivered right to your farm.
Treating a sick calf can be challenging with all the regulations on shared class antibiotics, unless you have a solid VCPR.
VCPR is a veterinary client-patient relationship. Each state has a marginally different definition of what that means legally. But for the most part, it is the responsibility of the veterinarian to your operation and then how you interact with your veterinarian in return. So with the lack of medications being available over the counter, now having that established VCPR is more and more important to the producer.
Relationship goals must be clear and communicated. Do you want a lot of contact or just damage control?
The concept of a VCPR being scary, in my mind, is only if you do not have a VCPR or you're not willing to look and reach out to have that relationship with the veterinarian. So an example of that is constant interaction with your veterinarian and persistent decision making back and forth between the two of you for your operation. Look and find and search and define your goals and then interview and find a veterinarian that fits that. And it is going to be a massive benefit.
Your chosen area veterinarian might still be 60 miles from the ranch. All the more reason to establish those professional relationships.
There's actually a lot of discussion of whether there is a shortage of food animal veterinarians or if there is a poor distribution of food animal veterinarians. And from a producer standpoint, a shortage of veterinarians to me only means that you need to support your VCPR even more thoroughly. So reach out to your existing veterinarians, describe to them how your operation goals could help them build their practice larger, help you have more availability to the veterinarian.
In the past, veterinarians were not as readily available. Interactions were strictly business, but expectations are evolving.
Newer generation of veterinarians, and sometimes producers will express this to me as a concern, is that they want to be more actively involved in your operation, or they demand that in order to get you prescriptions, and they want to help you on a day-to-day basis. They want to know what you're doing as a benefit to production. And if we can switch our mindset from having a VCPR as an obstacle to having a VCPR as a benefit, then all of a sudden production across the board is benefited.
To foster innovation, Lewis started a producers alliance at her practice to bring like-minded cattlemen together.
So educationally, things that are of interest to them, market-wise, feed-wise, that group has reached out as far as to buy feed together, they buy drugs together, we interact on a routine basis about production goals across the whole group. They have put together calves and sold calves together. So our clinic initiated that. The group of producers as a whole have taken it way farther than we ever anticipated it would go.
It begins with sorting out needs and goals for a cattle enterprise, then finding a veterinarian who best fits those plans. I'm Bob Cervera.
Watch Ag AM in Kansas online at agamandkansas.com.